The marketplace was alive with noise, alien voices rising in cruel laughter. The air was heavy with the smell of dust, food, and smoke, but all attention was fixed on one corner, where a young alien girl stood trembling in the open square. Her clothes had been torn away, leaving her unclothed and humiliated. She tried to cover herself with her arms, but every time she moved, someone from the crowd hurled garbage at her. Rotten fruit splattered against her bare skin. Broken shells and stones clattered at her feet. The people shouted insults in their harsh tongue, mocking her tribe, mocking her weakness. She refused to cry. Her bright eyes glared back at them with quiet defiance, even though her body shook. She stood tall, her chin raised. The crowd hated her even more for that. They wanted tears. They wanted to see her break. Among the crowd stood a human soldier, silent and watchful. He had arrived only days ago on this alien world, a stranger in every sense. His uniform marked him as someone different, someone the locals distrusted. Yet at this moment, his gaze was not on them, it was fixed on the girl. His fists clenched as he saw her suffering. His jaw tightened as another piece of trash struck her cheek. Leaving a red mark, he had seen cruelty in war. But this was different. This was not battle. This was torment for amusement. The crowd cheered as one of the alien boys picked up a bucket of dirty water and threw it at her. The water splashed across her body, dripping from her hair. The girl swayed but did not fall. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, refusing to give them the satisfaction of a scream. The human's heart pounded in his chest. Part of him told himself to stay out of it, to remain invisible, after all. He was a guest here, an outsider in a hostile land. But another part of him, the stronger part, whispered that no one deserved this. A voice in the crowd shouted, "Strip her pride away," and another threw a stone. It struck her shoulder. She flinched, but kept standing, her lips pressed tightly. Together, the human could feel the heat of anger rising in him. He wanted to move, but he waited. His eyes scanned the guards standing nearby. Tall, armored figures who laughed along with the crowd. They made no attempt to stop the cruelty. Instead, they encouraged it, shouting jeers of their own. The girl lifted her head once more, her hair wet and tangled, her chest rising and falling. With heavy breaths, she looked around. Not for help, but as if daring them to continue. Her spirit was not yet broken, but it was fading. The human soldier took a step forward without realizing it, then stopped, his boots scraping the dusty ground. A nearby alien noticed him and sneered, whispering something to another. Laughter followed. They pointed at him, mocking his silence. He ignored them. His eyes locked on the girl. Something inside him told him that if he walked away now, he would never forgive himself. The crowd grew wilder. Their chants louder. The alien boy, who had thrown the dirty water, returned with something else in his hand. A sharp stick. He waved it high, preparing to strike. The girl's eyes widened for the first time, not in fear for herself, but in shock that they would go this far. She braced herself, teeth clenched, and that was the moment the human moved. His body shifted before his mind fully decided. He pushed past the nearest alien. The crowd gasped in surprise. He marched forward with heavy steps, shadow falling across the girl, his broad frame cutting through the jeering mass. The alien boy froze, his arms still raised. The laughter around him died into murmurs. The human's glare was sharp, his voice low but filled with steel. Enough, silence spread like a wave, broken only by the girl's shaky breathing. Her eyes widened as she looked at him, confusion and disbelief written on her face. No one had stepped forward before. No one had dared. The human removed his coat slowly, his hands steady. The crowd whispered in confusion, thinking he would strike her with it, but instead stepped closer and draped the coat across her shoulders. The girl gasped softly, her body stiffening under the heavy fabric. Warmth spread across her chilled skin. She clutched the coat to her chest. The first tears finally touched her eyes, but not of humiliation, of something different, something she had thought impossible. The marketplace fell into stunned silence. The aliens looked at one another, their laughter gone, replaced by unease. Some hissed in anger, others muttered in disbelief. The guards stirred, stepping forward, their weapons shifting. The tension in the air grew sharp and heavy. It felt like violence was only a breath away, but the human did not move back. His stance was solid. His shoulders straight, he stood beside the girl, as if daring anyone to try again for the first time since her torment began. She did not stand alone, and for the first time, the crowd no longer looked at her as prey, but at the human who had broken their cruel game. The cruel spectacle had changed, and nothing would be the same again. The human stood firm in the middle of the marketplace. His coat wrapped around the trembling alien girl, the weight of countless eyes pressed down on him. The silence was louder than the cruel laughter had been moments before. Every alien watched, uncertain whether to laugh, shout, or attack. The girl clutched the coat tightly around her body, her wide eyes locked on the strange human who had stepped into her nightmare. She could not understand why he had done this. No one had ever dared. No one had ever stopped the torment. Yet here he stood, solid as stone, a wall between her and the cruelty of her own people. The alien boy who had raised the stick to strike her finally found his voice. He snarled and swung it down. But before it could touch the girl, the human's hand shot out, his grip closing around the wooden shaft. The boy's eyes widened as the human tore it from his grasp with ease and snapped it in two. The sound cracked through the air like thunder. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Some shouted insults, others spat on the ground. Yet no one moved closer. The human dropped the broken stick at his feet, his face calm, but his eyes burning. One of the alien guards stepped forward, his armor clanking, his voice loud and mocking. "Human, this is not your fight," he said. "Step aside, or you will bleed here like she should." The human's jaw tightened. His hand slowly rested on his sidearm, though he did not draw it yet. His voice was steady as he replied, "Not today." The guard sneered, his fangs flashing as he raised his weapon. The crowd roared with anticipation. They wanted blood, if not hers, then his. The girl tugged at the human's sleeve, her voice a desperate whisper. "Please, leave me. You cannot fight them all." Her eyes were wide with fear. Not for herself, but for him. This stranger who had given her more kindness in one moment than anyone else had in years. But the human only shook his head, his voice calm yet unyielding. "No one deserves this," he said. "Not you." The crowd stirred restlessly, angry. Voices rising again, stones were lifted, fists clenched. The marketplace became a storm of tension ready to explode. The guards signaled to move in, heavy boots thudding against the dirt, their weapons gleaming in the dim light. The human's pulse raced, yet his stance was unshaken. He spread his arms slightly, shielding the girl with his own body. His eyes swept across the mob, daring anyone to take the first step. The girl felt her breath catch, her hands clutched tighter at the coat. She did not understand this man. She did not understand why he risked everything. But something deep within her heart stirred. Something she thought she had lost forever: hope. The first guard lunged, but before the fight could begin, chaos ripped through the square. A cart overloaded with fruit toppled to the ground, spilling its contents. The animals harnessed to it panicked, braying and thrashing. Scattering in every direction, the marketplace erupted in noise and confusion. The crowd screamed and scrambled to get clear. Bodies collided, shouts echoed as people stumbled. The human reacted instantly. Seizing the chance, he turned to the girl, his hand reaching out. "Come with me," he commanded firmly. For a moment, she hesitated, torn between fear and disbelief. But then she placed her trembling hand in his. His grip was strong, steady, pulling her into motion. Together, they plunged into the chaos. Weaving through the frightened crowd, angry shouts rose behind them. The guards realized too late what was happening. Their voices bellowed above the noise. "Stop them! Stop the human!" The girl stumbled as a fleeing alien shoved past her. But the human caught her before she fell, his arm steady around her waist. "Keep moving," he urged, his voice low and urgent. They darted into a narrow alley, the sounds of pursuit thundering after them. Boots and claws striking stone, voices echoing in the night. The human led her through winding paths, turning corner after corner, his mind mapping the maze in an instant. Her bare feet stumbled on the rough ground, her body weak from the ordeal. Yet she pushed forward, carried by his strength and determination. The coat flapped around her legs. As she ran, her heart racing with fear and something else she could not name. At last, he pulled her into the shadow of an abandoned building. The door half broken, the walls cracked and silent. They slipped inside, the darkness swallowing them whole. The human pressed his back to the wall, listening. The sound of boots and shouts thundered past the alley, fading as the guards searched in the wrong direction. His chest heaved with controlled breaths, his ears straining for any sign they had been discovered. The girl leaned against the opposite wall, her body trembling. She clutched the coat tighter around her, her eyes never leaving him. This strange man who had defied her tormentors, who had risked his life to shield her. She wanted to speak, but no words came. Her throat felt tight, her heart heavy with emotions she could not name. At last, she whispered, "Why? Why would you do this?" The human turned his head toward her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. His voice low and calm, because someone had to. He said. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken thoughts. Outside, the marketplace remained in chaos. But inside this broken shelter, something had shifted. The girl looked down at the coat wrapped around her shoulders. Its warmth was foreign, strange, yet comforting. She had lived so long without kindness, she had forgotten what it felt like. Her eyes lifted to him again, her voice barely a whisper. "You do not even know me." The human's answer was simple, steady. "I don't need to." The weight of those words struck her more deeply than the stones had. For the first time since her people's fall, she felt seen, not as an object of scorn, not as prey, but as a person in that broken shelter, with guards searching outside and danger still close. The alien girl realized her life had changed, and the human who stood before her had become more than a stranger. He had become her protector. The abandoned building was quiet, the air thick with dust. Every sound from outside echoed like thunder in their ears. The alien girl sat against the wall, her body still trembling from fear and exhaustion. The human stood near the doorway, peering through a crack in the broken wood, his hand close to his weapon but not yet drawing it. The girl clutched his coat tightly around herself, the warmth of it strange against her cold skin. Her eyes kept drifting toward him, her thoughts filled with confusion. He had risked everything for her, a stranger, someone who owed her nothing. She could not understand why. Outside, the noise of angry voices grew louder. Heavy boots pounded the ground. The guards were searching every corner of the marketplace and the alleys beyond. Their shouts carried through the air, cruel words filled with rage. The human's eyes narrowed as he spotted shadows moving closer. He turned to the girl, his voice low but firm. "They're coming." Her breath caught, her heart racing. She pressed herself tighter against the wall, whispering, "You cannot fight them. They will kill you." But the human only shook his head, his voice calm and steady. "Then let them try." She stared at him, her chest tightening. She had seen men boast before. She had seen warriors full of arrogance, but his words were not arrogance. They were certainty. He meant every syllable. The wooden door rattled as someone outside shoved against it. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The girl flinched, her fingers gripping the coat as though it were armor. The human stood unmoving, his shadow cast long across the floor. The door creaked again. Voices shouted in their alien tongue, then silence fell. The kind of silence that came before violence. The girl's breathing grew sharp and shallow. She wanted to tell him to run, to leave her behind, to save himself. But before she could speak, the door burst inward, splinters flying across the room. 3 armored guards stormed inside, their weapons gleaming, their eyes full of hatred. They spotted the girl instantly, their laughter harsh and cruel. But then they saw the human, and their laughter faltered. He stood tall, his hand now resting firmly on the grip of his weapon, his eyes locked on them. Unshaken, one of the guards barked. A command, "Step aside, human, she belongs to us." His voice was mocking. But beneath it was a flicker of unease. The human did not move. His voice cut through the air like steel. "She belongs to no one." The guard snarled, stepping closer. Their weapons raised, the girl gasped softly, clutching the coat tighter. She whispered, "Please, don't fight them. You can't win." But the human ignored her plea, his stance solid, his gaze fixed on the enemies before him. The tension in the room grew sharp. Every second stretched like an eternity. The first guard lunged forward, his blade raised high, but before it could strike, the human moved. His weapon flashing from its holster, a single shot rang out. The sound deafening in the small room. The guard's weapon clattered to the floor. As he stumbled back, the other 2 guards froze, shock flashing across their faces. The human did not lower his weapon, his voice low and steady. "Who's next?" The girl's eyes widened, her heart pounding. She had never seen anyone stand against the guards, never seen anyone defy them with such calm defiance. The second guard snarled, rushing forward, but the human shifted smoothly. Grabbing a broken piece of wood from the shattered door, he struck hard, the impact echoing. The guard stumbled back, dazed. The third guard hesitated, his eyes flicking to the girl. Then back to the human. The silence grew heavy once more. Outside, more voices could be heard approaching. The sound of boots striking the ground like drums. Of war, the girl's chest rose and fell rapidly. She whispered, "They will come in numbers. You cannot stop them all." Her voice cracked with fear. The human glanced at her, his eyes softer for a brief moment. His words simple, "Then we'll find another way." The noise outside grew louder, shadows passing by the broken windows. The girl's heart sank. She knew they were surrounded. The human moved closer to her, crouching so their eyes met, his voice quiet but unyielding. "Stay behind me, no matter what happens." She nodded slowly, her throat tight. She did not understand why, but she trusted him, more than she had trusted anyone in years. The doorframe rattled again. This time under heavier force, more guards were preparing to break through. The human rose to his full height, his stance unflinching. The girl pressed herself against the wall, clutching the coat as if it were her only shield. The marketplace outside had gone quieter now. Whispers carried through the air. The crowd had gathered, waiting to see what would happen. Word had spread one human standing against the guards, protecting a girl everyone else had condemned, inside the ruined shelter. The human's presence filled the space like a storm waiting to break, his hand steady on his weapon, his body ready to move. The girl's eyes never left him. Her fear was still strong, but mixed with something else now, something unfamiliar, a fragile spark of faith. The door shuddered again. the wall cracked, the moment stretched. Heavy with silence, heavy with danger. And in that silence, the alien girl realized one truth: this human was not like the others. And if he had chosen to stand for her, then perhaps, just perhaps, the world was not as hopeless as she once believed. The threat of violence hung thick in the air. But so did the promise of something greater.
Astrid.
The old shelter shook as the heavy boots outside drew closer. The alien girl pressed her back against the cracked wall, her breathing sharp and unsteady. The human stood tall before her, his hand gripping his weapon, his eyes fixed on the broken doorway. The guards outside shouted orders, their harsh voices echoing through the night. The crowd of aliens murmured restlessly. Waiting to see the outcome, everyone wanted blood. Whether it was hers or his, it did not matter. The human's mind worked quickly. He knew they could not hold this position. More guards were coming. He glanced at the girl, her body trembling. The oversized coat wrapped tightly around her. She was weak, but her eyes still burned with spirit. The door burst inward again, splinters raining across the floor. 2 guards stormed inside. Their weapons raised, but before they could strike, the human fired, one shot into the ceiling. The sound thundered through the room like an explosion. The crowd outside gasped, panic rippled through them. Some fled, others froze. The guards inside faltered for a heartbeat. The human did not waste that moment. He grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her to her feet. "Run," he commanded firmly. She stumbled at first, her legs still shaky, but his grip was strong, steady, guiding her forward. They darted through a hole in the back wall, the cold night air rushing against their faces. The shouts behind them grew louder. The guards realized too late what had happened. After them, voices roared, boots thundered across stone. The girl's bare feet slapped against the ground, every step sending sharp pain up her legs, but she did not stop. The human's presence pulled her forward. His voice calm yet urgent. "Keep moving." They weaved through narrow alleys, shadows swallowing them for a moment before lantern light revealed their figures again. The city was alive with chaos. Frightened animals ran wild after the gunshot. Carts overturned. Merchants shouted in anger and fear. The human used the chaos as cover, dragging her through twisting paths, turning when the guards closed in, slipping. Through gaps too small for armored soldiers, the girl's breath came in sharp gasps. Her chest burning, she whispered between breaths, "Why do you risk everything for me?" But he did not answer. His eyes scanning for danger, his only focus was escape. A guard appeared suddenly at the mouth of an alley, his weapon raised. The girl gasped in terror, but the human lunged forward, striking the guard's wrist with the butt of his weapon. The alien cried out, dropping his blade before he could recover. The human shoved him aside and pulled the girl onward. The chase continued, the sound of pursuit never far behind. Every corner turned, every shadow crossed. The danger grew closer, yet the human never let go of her hand. Finally, he spotted a narrow staircase leading downward, half hidden in the side of a crumbling building. Without hesitation, he pulled her down. The steps creaked under their weight, leading into darkness. The air grew damp and cold as they descended into forgotten tunnels beneath the city. Broken stones and dripping water surrounded them. The girl stumbled, nearly falling, but the human caught her, steadying her with his arm. "Careful," he whispered. She looked up at him, her chest heaving, her voice shaking. "You should have left me." "They will not stop. They will hunt you now, too." His eyes met hers, calm even in the darkness. "Then let them hunt," he said. "I won't abandon you." Her throat tightened. She turned her face away, ashamed of the tears welling in her eyes. She had been spat on, beaten, stripped of dignity, yet this one man treated her as if she mattered. The tunnels stretched endlessly, the sound of distant water echoing like whispers. The human led her deeper until the noise of pursuit faded above them. At last, they stopped, resting in the shadows of a collapsed wall. The girl sank to the ground, exhausted. Pulling the coat tightly around her body, she looked at him with wide eyes, still unsure whether to thank him or to curse him for dragging himself into her misery. "Why?" she asked again, her voice trembling. "Why do this?" The human leaned against the wall, his chest rising with slow breaths. His voice low but steady, "Because I couldn't watch any longer." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the drip of water and their ragged breathing. The girl lowered her head, tears finally sliding down her cheeks, not of weakness, but of something else she had forgotten: relief. Above them, the city remained alive with noise. Guards shouted, crowds stirred, rumors spread like fire. Whispers of a human who defied them, whispers of a girl who had been spared humiliation. The girl wiped her eyes quickly. Not wanting him to see, she whispered, "They will never stop searching." The human pushed himself upright, his figure looming in the dim light, his voice calm. "Then we stay hidden until the time is right." She looked at him in silence, studying the lines of his face, the steady way he carried himself, the quiet strength that never wavered. In that moment she realized he was not simply protecting her out of pity. He truly believed she deserved better. Her heart ached with emotions she could not name. She clutched the coat tighter, whispering softly, "No one has ever stood for me before." The human looked at her, his expression unreadable, but his voice gentle. "Then remember this night." She nodded slowly, her tears glistening in the faint light for the first time since her people's fall. She felt something she thought was gone forever: hope. Above them, the guards scoured the city, their rage growing. The hunt would not end. But in the tunnels below, hidden in shadows, a bond had begun, fragile yet unbreakable. The girl did not know where this path would lead, whether to freedom or death. But one truth had already taken root in her heart. She was no longer alone, and in that silence, in that dark, forgotten place, the escape and the chaos had become the first step toward something greater. The tunnels were cold and damp. Water dripped steadily from cracks above. The faint echo of their breathing was the only sound in the darkness. The human sat against a broken stone wall, his weapon resting across his knees, his eyes scanning the shadows. Always alert, the alien girl sat nearby, wrapped in his coat, her knees pulled close to her chest, her body still trembling from exhaustion, yet her eyes were fixed on him. This strange man who had risked everything. Her thoughts swirled in silence until she could no longer hold them back. "You don't know who I am," she whispered, her voice weak but edged with bitterness. "You don't know what I have done, or what my people have done." The human turned his head slightly, his face calm, his eyes steady. "I don't need to know," he replied simply. "I saw what they did to you, and that was enough." Her throat tightened at his words. She lowered her gaze, her fingers gripping the edge of the coat. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her voice cracked, as she began, "My people. We once lived free, proud under the open skies, but that ended when the empire came." Her words carried weight, heavy with memory. Her eyes stared into the darkness as if she could still see it. "They burned our homes. They chained our warriors. They took the strong to fight for them and left the weak to suffer. My tribe fought until there was nothing left, and those of us who survived." She paused, her voice breaking. "We were made into trophies." The human said nothing. He let her speak, his silence stronger than words. "They kept me alive," she whispered bitterly. "Not out of mercy, but for their amusement. Every day was humiliation. Every night a reminder that I was nothing to them. I thought it would never end." Her fingers dug into the coat, her knuckles pale, her voice grew sharper. Do you know what it feels like to stand in front of your own people and be treated? Worse than an animal, to have no one come to your aid, to see only laughter when you cry. Her voice cracked at the last word, her body trembling with the weight of it. Her eyes filled with tears that she quickly brushed away. I learned to stop crying. I learned to stop feeling, because feelings only made it worse. The human's chest tightened as he listened. His jaw clenched. He had seen war. He had seen cruelty. But the quiet pain in her voice was different. It was not just the loss of her people, it was the loss of herself. She turned her face toward him, her eyes wet and fierce. "And then you came," she whispered. "Why? Why did you put yourself in danger for me? I was nothing to you." His voice was steady, soft but unyielding. "Because you are not nothing." Her breath caught, her chest rising sharply. His words struck deeper than any wound she had ever known. She looked at him in silence, unable to speak. He shifted slightly, his gaze steady on hers. "I don't care what your people did, or what you believe about yourself. What I saw today was wrong, and I would not stand by." Her lips trembled, her tears spilling again. She pressed her forehead against her knees, her voice breaking. "No one has ever said that to me before." For a long time the tunnels were silent, broken only by her quiet sobs. The human remained still, his presence steady, a wall against the weight of her despair. When her breathing calmed, she lifted her head, her voice low but stronger. "I used to dream," she admitted. "Before everything was taken, I dreamed of flying beyond the stars, of seeing worlds my people only told stories about. I thought those dreams died when my tribe fell." She looked down at the coat wrapped around her, her voice soft. "But tonight, when you covered me, when you stood for me, I felt something I thought was gone forever." The human leaned forward slightly, his eyes softer now. "What did you feel?" he asked gently. She held his gaze, her lips trembling. "Hope," she whispered, the word fragile yet powerful for the first time. A faint smile touched his lips, not of joy, but of quiet understanding. He nodded slowly, then held on to it. Her heart ached at those words. She wanted to believe. She wanted to let that fragile spark grow. Yet fear clung to her still. "But they will never stop," she whispered. "They will hunt us until the end. They will kill you if you stay with me." The human's eyes did not waver, his voice steady. "Then let them come." She stared at him, stunned by his certainty. She had lived her whole life with people who bowed, who broke, who surrendered. But this man spoke as if fear had no power over him, as if protecting her was as natural as breathing. Her chest rose and fell, her tears drying on her cheeks. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Perhaps the stories about humans were wrong." He tilted his head, his eyes narrowing slightly. "What stories?" Her gaze dropped, her voice filled with quiet shame. "That humans were ruthless conquerors, cruel as the empire itself. I believed them. We all did." The human was silent for a moment. Then he spoke quietly. "We are many things, but we are not that." The words hung in the air, heavy and true. The girl hugged the coat tighter around her, her body still trembling, but her heart beating differently now, faster, stronger, as if something inside her was waking again for the first time in years. She allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was worth saving. And as the darkness wrapped around them, she realized one truth. The human had not just given her protection, he had given her back her voice. Her story, her hope, the tunnels were quiet. The drip of water echoed like a slow heartbeat. The alien girl leaned against the wall, still wrapped in the human's coat, her face pale, but her eyes brighter than before. She had shared her story. She had shown her pain, and for the first time, someone had listened. The human sat close to the doorway of the broken tunnel chamber, his body tense, his hand resting near his weapon. Though his voice had been calm for her, his mind was alert. He knew the silence above would not last. The guards would return, and when they did, they would not come in small numbers. "The girl," whispered, her voice low. "They will find us. They always do." Her fingers tightened on the coat as though it were armor. The human turned his head slightly, his eyes steady. "Then we'll face them," he replied. His tone simple, firm, her heart clenched at his words, not because of fear, but because of the certainty in his voice. No hesitation, no doubt, only resolve. It was something she had never known in anyone before. For a time, silence stretched between them. But then the sound came to stand at first. Then louder, boots striking stone, voices barking orders. The unmistakable march of soldiers. The girl's breath quickened. She pressed herself against the wall, whispering, "They've found us." The human rose to his feet, his shadow tall in the dim light, his weapon drawn now, his movements calm but sharp. He stepped in front of her, his voice low, "Stay behind." "Me," the tunnel echoed with harsh laughter. The guards' voices carried through the darkness, mocking and cruel. The human hides with his little prize. One voice jeered, "Come out, hero, come out and die." The girl shivered, memories of humiliation clawing at her mind. But she forced herself to breathe. She looked at the human's back, at the way he stood. Unmoving, fearless, and she clung to that image. The first shadows appeared at the end of the tunnel. Armored figures advancing slowly, their blades glinting in the faint torchlight. More shadows followed behind them. Dozens, their numbers growing. The girl gasped softly, whispering, "There are too many." The human's voice was steady, quiet. But unyielding numbers don't matter when you stand for what's right. Her chest tightened, her tears threatened to fall again. Not from fear this time, but from the strange, unshakable strength he gave her. The guards moved closer, their laughter rising, their voices taunting. "Hand her over, human, and we might let you live." The human stepped forward, his voice cutting. "Through the tunnel like steel, she belongs to no one." The words echoed against the stone. Even the guards faltered at the weight of them, but their hesitation turned to rage. They roared, raising their weapons as they surged forward. The first clash was sudden. The human fired. The shot echoed through the tunnels. One guard fell back. But more pressed in, their weapons flashing. The tunnel filled with the sounds of battle. The girl pressed herself against the wall, her heart racing, her eyes wide with terror. Yet she could not look away. She watched him fight, every movement. Sharp, controlled, his body a wall between her and the storm. The guards shouted, their voices filled with anger. Yet beneath it was frustration. He was only one man. Yet he fought as though he carried the strength of many. The girl's breath came in short bursts. She whispered to herself, "He cannot hold them forever." Her eyes darted to the broken stones around her, her mind racing for the first time in years. She felt the urge not just to hide, but to stand. She grabbed a broken piece of stone. Her hands trembling, it was small, useless against armored guards, yet she gripped it tightly. The human fought on, his body moving like a shield, his voice calm even in chaos. "Stay down," he commanded when he glanced back at her, but she shook her head, her voice trembling but firm. Not this time. He froze for only a moment, his eyes locking on hers, surprise flashing there. But then the guards pressed harder, forcing his focus back to the fight. The tunnel shook with the struggle. The guards shouted, the human gritted. His teeth, the girl's heart thundered. She wanted to help, but fear clawed at her chest. She forced herself to stand, to take one shaky step closer, and then it happened. One of the guards turned his gaze toward her, his cruel smile spreading. He lunged past the human, his weapon raised. She froze, terror gripping her, But before the blade could strike, the human was there, faster than she could follow, his body colliding with the guard, the clash echoing through the stone. The guard fell hard, his weapon skidding across the ground. The girl gasped, her tears spilling. He had shielded her again, always putting himself in danger, always standing in the fire so she would not. The remaining guards hesitated. Whispers rippled through them, even in their cruelty. Doubt had begun to take root. This human, this outsider, refused to break, refused to surrender. And outside the tunnels, in the streets above, the crowd had gathered again, whispers spreading like wildfire, stories of what was happening below their feet. Of a human who defied the guards, who protected the girl they had mocked. The guards growled, preparing to strike again, their numbers still overwhelming, but the human stood taller than ever. His voice steady, "You will not have her." The girl clutched the coat tighter, her heart burning, for the first time in her life. She did not feel like prey. She felt like someone worth fighting for. And as the clash loomed once more, she realized the truth. The return of the guards was not the end. It was only the beginning. The tunnels shook with every clash of steel. The guards pressed forward, their numbers heavy, their anger loud. But the human stood unbroken. Every strike he made was precise. Every move filled with purpose. Behind him, the alien girl held his coat tighter, her eyes wide with fear. But her heart burning with something stronger. The noise above grew louder. The crowd had gathered, their voices carrying down into the tunnels, whispers mixing with gasps. They had come to see the fight, to see the human fall. But what they saw instead was something no one had expected. The guards snarled, their voices sharp. "You cannot win. Human, she is ours." But his voice cut through their rage, calm and steady. "She belongs to no one." Those words echoed, carried beyond the tunnel walls, carried to the ears of the watching crowd. Silence rippled through them. Doubt spread like cracks in stone. The girl's chest rose and fell quickly. She whispered, "You can't fight them." All her voice trembling, yet he turned his head slightly. His eyes steady on hers, his voice low. "I don't need to fight them all. I only need to stand." Her throat tightened, her tears falling again. Not of fear, but of something she had never felt before. Pride. Another wave of guards surged. The human fought with everything he had. The clash echoed like thunder. But then a roar rose not from the guards, but from the crowd above. It was not anger, it was not laughter, it was something else. Voices shouted, not at the human, but at the guards. "Enough," one voice cried, then another. "Stop this." The words grew louder, rising above the noise. The crowd that had once thrown garbage now stood in hesitation, their cruelty faltering. The guards froze, confusion spreading, their authority shaken. The human stance never wavered, his body a wall between them and the girl. But he did not strike. He waited, letting the silence grow heavier. The girl stepped forward then, her bare feet trembling on the stone, but her voice clear, stronger than before. "I am not your trophy," she said, her words echoing in the tunnel. "I am not your plaything. I am not your shame." Her voice shook, but she did not stop. Her hand tightened on the coat, her chin lifting high. "I am more than what you made me." The crowd above grew silent, their whispers turning to stillness. The guards shifted uneasily, their sneers fading. The human looked at her, his eyes soft for a moment, then back to the guards, his voice firm. "You see her as weak, but I see her strength." The guards growled, their authority cracking. One raised his weapon again. But the voices above grew louder. The crowd shouted now, "Leave them, enough blood. Let them go." The sound was like a wave, impossible to ignore. For the first time, the guards faltered, hesitation clear in their movements. The human took a slow step forward, his voice calm but unyielding. You can't stop change. Not tonight. The girl's heart raced, her tears falling freely now. She realized what was happening. The cruelty that had bound her was breaking. Not because the guards allowed it, but because one human refused to bow. The guards exchanged uncertain looks. Their confidence fractured. Finally, with snarls of frustration, they stepped back, retreating into the shadows. Their voices bitter. This isn't over. They spat, but their steps carried them away. The tunnel grew quiet again. The human lowered his weapon slowly, his chest rising with steady breaths. The girl stared at him, her lips trembling. You changed everything," she whispered. He shook his head gently, his voice calm. "No, you did." When you spoke, her heart swelled at those words. Her knees weakened, she sank against the wall. Clutching the coat, she realized he was right. She had spoken, she had stood, and for the first time, they had listened. The human walked to her, crouching beside her, his eyes steady. "It won't be easy," he said softly. "The fight isn't finished. But tonight, you are free." Her tears spilled. But they were different now, not of pain, but of release. She nodded slowly, whispering, "Because of you." He shook his head again, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "Because of us." Above, the crowd began to disperse. Whispers. Carrying through the night, whispers of the human who covered the girl. Whispers of the girl who found her voice. The story had already begun to spread, and stories had power. The girl rose slowly, her body weak, but her spirit stronger than it had ever been. The human stood beside her, his presence solid and unyielding. Together, they stepped toward the broken tunnel stairs, their figures rising from the shadows into the dim light above. The crowd parted as they emerged, silence hanging heavy. No one threw garbage now. No one laughed. They only watched as the girl walked, her head high, the coat wrapped around her. "Shoulders like a crown," she whispered to him, her voice low. "Why risk so much for me?" His answer was simple, steady, the same truth he had carried from the start. "Because no one deserves to be left in the dirt." Her lips trembled, a faint smile touched her face, fragile but real. She whispered back, "Then I will never forget." The human glanced at her, his eyes calm. "Good," he said. "Because this is only the beginning." They walked into the night, the stars above, vast and endless. The world uncertain, but for the first time, she did not fear what came next. She was no longer alone, and as they disappeared into the shadows together, the cruel spectacle that had once been her shame had become something else entirely. A legend of defiance, a spark of hope, and the first step toward a new beginning.